headlines. A senior official in Nigeria says that more than 300 schoolboys who were kidnapped last Friday have been handed over to government security forces. The Katsina state governor said that they were all alive and in good condition. The UK has warned that progress seems blocked and time is running out to strike a post-Brexit trade deal with the EU. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, says big differences remain and that resolving them would be very challenging. The Court for Arbitration in Sport has upheld the doping ban on Russia competing at global events, including the Olympics and football's World Cup. But the punishment has been reduced from 4 to 2 years. And a court in France has jailed a Moroccan man for life after finding him guilty of a terror attack on a Paris-bound train in 2015.
French President Emmanuel Macron has the coronavirus, his office says, adding that he will stay away from people for 7 days. In the United States, officials publicly charge a Kenyan man of plotting to attack an American city under the direction of militant group Al-Shabaab. 8 Hong Kong democracy activists appear in court for their part in protests this summer. And news reports say the United States plans to publicly charge another suspect in the deadly 1988 bombing of a passenger airplane over Scotland.
We start with another record-breaking day for coronavirus infections here in Japan. Authorities reported more than 3,200 cases on Thursday, the most ever. More than 191,000 people have now tested positive in the nation. Over 2,800 people have died. A record 822 cases were reported here in Tokyo on Thursday. 66 are in serious condition. In light of that growing number, the Tokyo government raised its alert for the healthcare system to the highest level for the first time.
It has become difficult to balance caring for coronavirus patients with regular medical work. We have exhausted all reserved resources. We must curb the number of new cases at any cost.
Officials asked hospitals in Tokyo to increase the number of beds for seriously ill coronavirus patients from 200 to 250. The Tokyo governor called on residents to be more careful ahead of the holiday season.
The virus won't heed the calendar, so I'm issuing a special alert for the year-end and New Year holidays in order to halt the spread of infection during that period.
Koike called for annual street lighting display events to be canceled or have shorter hours. Experts are concerned the virus may be spreading from metropolitan areas to major cities throughout Japan. Hiroshima Prefecture saw 138 new cases on Thursday.
I was worried because I saw more and more people coming out to town.
I hope the virus won't spread anymore in this city and prefecture.
About half of the infection clusters that occurred in the prefecture over the past few weeks were at bars and restaurants. Officials asked some of those businesses to close early from Thursday through early January. The World Health Organization plans to send researchers to China next month to investigate where the coronavirus came from. Chinese authorities are promising to help.
Since the outbreak of the pandemic, China has been acting in an open, transparent and responsible way. We started cooperating with the WHO on origin tracing very early on.
The spokesperson said China stands ready to enhance its cooperation with the WHO to advance global tracing efforts. He did not mention any specifics, such as where or when the researchers will be allowed to work. Earlier, a WHO spokesperson told NHK the organization is making logistical arrangements and hopes the team will be able to travel to China next month. The WHO sent 2 officials to Beijing in July to prepare for the investigation. One of those officials told NHK earlier this month the WHO needed to thoroughly investigate the first cases.
We also need to interview them again in more details to try to detect all the cases in November and maybe before, and maybe elsewhere outside of Wuhan city.
U.S. President Donald Trump has speculated the virus may have escaped from a lab in Wuhan. China rejects such claims. The WHO says it's found no evidence to suggest the virus was manipulated or created in a lab. Heavy snowfall on Thursday stranded more than 1,000 vehicles on a Japanese expressway. The line of cars and trucks on this highway connecting Tokyo to Niigata stretched for a full 15 kilometers. Many had no access to food or water for hours. Local emergency officials say they fielded calls from frustrated drivers, some of whom reported falling ill. NHK reached one driver who'd been stuck in his vehicle since midnight.
The snow was extremely heavy. As time went by, the cars got buried. I was really scared. I've eaten all of my food and drinks. Now to drink water, I have to melt snow I collect in a plastic bottle.
The Niigata prefectural government is calling on people to stay in their vehicles as ground self-defense force troops try to free them. Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide met with ministers to discuss the heavy snowfall, which has also knocked out power for many Sea of Japan communities. He's asking local officials and agencies to work together to get services back up and running. Niigata and neighboring Gunma prefectures have already seen 7 times more snow than what's normally for this time of year. It's left residents stunned.
It happened overnight. I didn't expect this much snow.
The wintry weather won't let up ahead of the weekend, with another massive dumping set to hit a large part of the region late Friday or Saturday. The number of foreigners living in Japan has been on the decline since the coronavirus outbreak here. Immigration procedures were partially eased in October, but are still not back to normal. NHK World's Imono Tatsuro looks at the impact that's having on 2 small towns in the north.
Shimkapu village is home to one of the major ski resorts in the prefecture of Hokkaido. Dominated by the mighty Mount Tomamu, the village attracts not only powder enthusiasts but foreign workers. This resort employed 160 last year. But their numbers have dropped by 60% due to the difficulty of getting Japanese visas right now. It's meant the village has had to take a big economic hit.
It's a pity that foreign workers can't come. We have no choice but to reconsider all our plans.
Other places in Hokkaido are also struggling to retain foreign workers and attract visitors. Higashikawa has started providing incentives and support to make it easier for foreigners to come. 8 Indonesian students arrived earlier this month. The town established its first public Japanese language school 5 years ago. Hundreds of people, mainly foreign students, enroll every year. Their presence and their school fees, rent payments, and spending inject about $2.9 million a year into the town economy. They are also a potential workforce for local companies. Higashikawa has started subsidizing airfare for up to about $340 per person. The town will also pick up the tab for up to about $65 per day in accommodation costs for a 2-week quarantine.
The cost of coming to Japan is really high. Without support, I was worried about being able to afford it.
I'm really happy and grateful for the school.
The town is certainly not rich at the moment, but I think that investing now in human resources will open the way for the future.
While the coronavirus has upended the town's financial planning, The subsidy program is one way to begin what may be a long road to recovery.
China has become the third country after the United States and the former Soviet Union to collect and bring back rock samples from the moon. China considers lunar exploration a key to its space program. The China National Space Administration says its capsule from the Chang'e 5 probe landed in Inner Mongolia before dawn on Thursday, local time. China Central Television broadcast images of workers recovering the device. The space agency had planned to collect about 2 kilograms of rocks from the moon's surface and beneath it. The capsule will be flown to a facility in Beijing for analysis.
This success marks a milestone in the development of China's space industry.
China has set a goal of becoming a major space power by 2030. Last year, it became the first nation to land a probe on the far side of the moon. China also launched a Mars probe in July. It's expected to reach the planet in mid-February and land a rover there. Also this year, China began global operation of its domestically developed satellite navigation system. It's said to be capable of guiding missiles more precisely. China stresses it'll use space for peaceful purposes, but its military is deeply involved in the space program. The United States and some other countries have expressed concern over the possible use of space for military purposes. The U.S. military has criticized China for failing to appear at a regular meeting on maritime and aviation safety aimed at preventing accidental clashes. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command on Wednesday announced the People's Liberation Army had declined to participate in the virtual meeting, which was scheduled for 3 days from Monday. Its commander, Admiral Philip Davidson, said China's refusal to show up is another example of the country not honoring its agreements. He said this should serve as a reminder to all nations as they pursue agreements with China. A Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson said on Thursday the U.S. accusations are weak and irresponsible. He made no specific comments on the meeting, including about whether or not the Chinese side attended. The U.S. military says it's met regularly with the Chinese side since 1998. It says in a meeting held in October, the two sides agreed on the importance of creating a framework through which they could communicate in times of emergency.